I'm the Jody Saver, and in this video, I'm going to share my top tips for saving a house deposit quickly. It's been a number of years now since I bought a property with my partner, and we had to put down a 10% deposit. So, in the 2 years before we bought, we did everything we could to save that deposit, and my share of that was £15,000 that I had to save. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through my 5 top tips for how I got from £0 in savings to £15,000 and enough to put down the house deposit. So just to give a bit of background, I started saving as soon as I got my graduate job after university. So tip number 1 is set a goal. So I find personally that it's really hard to save for something if you don't know what you're saving for, and also if you don't have a set figure in mind that you're saving. So when I was starting my savings journey, we knew we wanted to buy property in the future, and we had a look at the price of properties in the area and what the deposit size would need to be. We're quite confident that would probably want to put down a 10% deposit. So, we looked at average house prices in the area, and then calculated what 10% of that was, and then worked out how much we needed to save. And thinking about timeframes, we could see how many years we wanted to save that in, and therefore how much we would have to contribute each month. And it worked out that for me, my goal was to save £700 to £1,000 per month. Tip number 2 is pay yourself first. So this might seem an odd one, and you might have actually heard it already before, but what it means is when I got my take home pay each month, I would make sure that putting money aside into my savings was one of the first things I did. So if you just leave money in your bank account and then go throughout the month and do your monthly spends, what you might find is that there'll always be a reason why you can spend the money that's in your bank account. So there'll always be maybe a meal you want to go out for, or something you want to buy. But if you put if you put the money into a savings account at the earliest opportunity, it means that that money isn't sitting in your bank account where there's a temptation that you'll use it for something else. Um, so that was tip number 2, pay yourself first. Tip number 3, and now this is the biggest one, and this is the thing that helped me save the amount that I did within 2 years. It's live with your parents if you can. Now, this is something that I'm very fortunate and privileged to be able to do. I know there's lots of people who aren't able to move back in with their parents. Maybe they have tough relationships with their parents, or maybe the parents aren't around. But for me, I was able to live with my parents straight after university. And what that allowed me to do was really reduce what my housing costs were for those 2 years. So I paid my parents a couple of £100 a month that covered um, foods, bills, everything, which was brilliant. Whereas some of my peers who were renting independently were having to fork out, £800 to £1,000 a month for their housing costs and bills. So compared to them, I was able to save, £500 a month from just living with parents compared to if I had to be paying rent on a property. So this is a big one. This is the tip that allowed me to save up that money as quickly as I was able to. I think if I hadn't been able to live with my parents, then instead of 2 years to save up that deposit, it would have taken 4 years. Tip number 4 is make use of government schemes. So what I mean by that is when I was buying a property, I was able to use a help to buy ISA. Now, I don't know what all the latest ISAs are, and I know that they don't offer a help to buy ISA anymore. Like you can't open a new one, for example. I think you have to use a lifetime ISA instead. I'm not a financial advisor, so what I would say is go and do your own research on this. There's lots of stuff on gov.uk about what government help is available, and yes, making use of a um, help to buy ISA really helped, because what that allowed me to do was save some money into the ISA, and the government would top up whatever I had saved by 25%. So I think when it worked out, I got an extra £1,000 towards my property from the government bonus. But as I said, I don't know all the details about the current schemes that are available, so do your own research and have a look at those. But yeah, that was an extra £1,000 that was essentially for free, in the sense that I didn't have to earn that money. It was just from a bonus that the government were offering. And then tip number 5 is cut back on discretionary spends. So if you've got a goal in mind, like buying a property, and you've got a time frame in mind, for me, I was able to sacrifice going on expensive holidays in those 2 years, because I knew that there was a bigger goal that I wanted to achieve. So I could have easily spent a few £1,000s in those 2 years on some nice holidays. I still went on a holiday, but I didn't blow the budget in doing that. So yeah, I think cutting back on discretionary spends is really important if you want to meet your savings goal. So they're my 5 top tips. What I would say is that I'm been in a very fortunate position that I live in the northeast of England, where house house prices are a lot less than other areas of the country. Um, so actually, a 10% deposit was a lot easier for me to achieve in the northeast than it would be if, for example, I was living in London, and say a 10% deposit was £50,000 I was having to save. That's obviously a totally different scenario, and I don't want to be blasé about the difference in circumstance that I find myself in the northeast of England compared to elsewhere in the UK. However, I think these tips can be applied to any sort of saving strategy, but obviously the journey is harder if you live in a more expensive area of the UK. So yeah, those are my top 5 tips. I'll stop the video here, but do let me know in the comments if you've got any other tips that you use for saving a house deposit, and let me know if you're on a house deposit saving journey and how you're getting on, and I'll see you on the next video.